Hi folks, my name is Liam Malone. I'm the founder of Uprising Agricultural Cooperative here in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and today I'm going to talk about this vertical hydroponic system that I've put together and how you can put something together that's similar. Today what we're going to talk about is constructing a wall like this, and what does that entail? What kind of things do you need, and what kind of preparations do you need to make before you start constructing something? So here we go. First off, we're going to talk a little bit about PVC. So PVC is something that's used in plumbing. So these are typically found in any hardware store. You can order them online from supply houses, and they're relatively easy to find. What I'm using here is a PVC 2-inch double wide. These pieces, along with regular 2-inch pipe, and we cut 1.5 or 2-inch pieces to kind of join them together. And basically what that does is that allows you to build a column like this so that you can have two sides. You use these PVC T's, and those will create a drain for all of these to go into. You can end in an elbow so that way your first column comes down into all these T's. And what you're going to want to do is cut enough of these for each column. And then what I've done here is I've used these 2x6s. 2x6s allow a lot of space in between so that you can cut holes like this for drainage and allow that to go into your reservoir. The frame itself also, on the top, as you can see, I used a 2-inch hole saw to cut a hole through these so that I can allow the pipes to come out the top. Those little caps are really easy to find. They're about 40 cents a piece. But then once you have your columns and you have your bottom T put together, you can start irrigating the system. So let's talk about reservoirs. So that's just a fancy word for a big thing that all the water goes into. So this is a 55-gallon tote that I bought at Home Depot for about 20 bucks. And inside here, I have a submersible pump. That's what these are leading towards. Let's see if you can see that submersible pump. It's totally safe to submerge these and plug them in. But what happens is this allows for all of this water to be pumped up. Because what we want to do is attach this 3/4-inch polyethylene pipe. It's like an irrigation pipe. And you can find all sorts of these little T's and connectors. But what I've done is basically go up to a T here and then break it out. So that way, each one of these comes up to a little irrigation tube. And a 1/4-inch irrigation tube comes up here. And I've got myself set up with these sprinkler heads. Whoa! So that way, we'll go to an empty one and I'll show you what that accomplishes. Rather than just dripping down, with a spray tube, I have noticed that you can get full coverage. So you see it kind of dripping down there on each side. Because the key is, when you get these plants put in here, you want to make sure that the root systems are able to pick up that water. So let's talk about seeds. So what I have here is a regular, they're called 10 by 20 tray. It's a regular seedling tray. And this red guy in here is a product made by Groudon. It fits these little stone wool plugs perfectly. I prefer to use stone wool because it's fascinating how they create it. It's kind of like molten rock. They spin like cotton candy. Science is amazing, right? But what this allows the plants to do is be able to fully grow through this as though it were soil. But rather than soil, it stays connected. It stays as one piece, so that way you don't have dirt and debris going through your system. Let's talk about transplants. So let's say you've had your seedlings in your tray. Typically about 10 days is good. Once you see roots kind of poking out, that's usually a good indication that they are ready to be transplanted. So for instance, I'll pop this guy out. See, these little roots are starting to poke out. That's a good indication that it's ready to be transplanted. So you take the entire cube, put it in this cup, and then they fit perfectly in these fittings. So that way they can grow out And eventually, what you'll see is that these roots will really start cranking, right? These guys are really going along. Next, we're going to talk about lights. So these lights here that I have on this crossbeam are simple 20-watt LEDs that are used, they're kind of using a certain spectrum with more red and blue for plant growth. I simply affixed these with the little tabs that came with them, and then thanks to the shop at Hampshire, I was able to melt these into position, but you can really, you can fix these any way you want. Basically though, you just want them hanging in such a way that they're going to be able to throw the light directly at the plants. These guys are pretty cheap. You can get them in a multi-pack off of Amazon. So plants themselves need a certain amount of nutrients. Basically, the water itself isn't going to be enough. And there are many handy guides out there. General Hydroponics has a great one where you'll want to adjust your pH to a certain level so that way it can access all those nutrients, but also you want to be able to provide them. I was able to get this nutrient mix very cheap from a company called 5 Gallon Bucket Hydroponics, where you mix these individually and then mix them together. And then all you're going to want to pay attention to is your EC, or electrical conductivity. Let's talk about electrical conductivity real quick. So this is a total dissolved solids meter that also does electrical conductivity that I got off Amazon for, I think, 15 bucks or so. Most anything's on Amazon. You might be able to find these locally as well though. So basically this is measuring the amount of electrical conductivity, or basically the amount of heavy metals or nutrients that are in the system. So you just dip this guy in, and then you'll get a reading, ideally anywhere from about 900 to, I think, 1,000 is where we want to be. I'm a little under, so I'll have to mix up a little extra in. Next, we're going to talk about timers. Timers are very important to be able to kind of automate most of this process. The first one we're going to focus on is this one in the middle with all the tabs. This is linked directly to our pump, because we don't want our pump running all the time, right? What this does is allow us to push these in, and each one represents 15 minutes. So that way it'll be on for 15 minutes and off for 15 minutes. That way you're not going to blow the thing out entirely. Next, these two that you see on top and bottom are light timers. So what happens here is basically that we want to provide these ample light, both for our seedlings and for our wall, but we don't want to have it on all the time. We can kind of control this by setting a program. So as you notice, you kind of set what time it is, and then I have this going on at 7 a.m. and off at 11 p.m. That provides a ton of light for these plants, and it allows the light to be turned off and on automatically. I've set all of the lights to a power strip on this timer, so that way it's not crowding it. I was able to bump this out a little bit with a little adapter to be able to fit them all in here, so that way we have constant power the whole time. So now that we've walked through all the basic portions of the system and what constitutes it, you can kind of make your own. And basically you can put this together for a couple $100. That may seem like a lot, but when you think about the amount of grains or the amount of produce that you eat, you can really have this system like this pay itself off very, very quickly. The only things we really can't grow in here are potatoes or things that are a root vegetable, because obviously we don't really have much room for submerged plants. But these are put together relatively easily. And I learned pretty much everything I've done through trial and error. Thanks to Hampshire, I was able to get a number of grants to be able to work on systems like this. And I'm available for questions basically anytime. Certainly follow us on all the social medias at UAC Holyoke. And I want to thank you guys very much for your time. Please be safe out there. And remember, if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Let's grow up.